Welcome, everyone. I am Adeshewa Josh, and this is Africa Matters. This week, we begin in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where the military is accusing Rwanda of no less than an invasion after M23 rebels seize a key border town. As the UK government pushes ahead with a controversial plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda, we speak to some migrants living in Kigali. And we follow a Zimbabwean farmer in the United Kingdom who is breaking new ground by becoming the only white maize producer in the country. Weeks of escalating tensions have led to a diplomatic standoff between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. Relations between the two Central African neighbors took a dramatic turn on June the 13th, following the capture of a major border town in the DRC by M23 rebels, a local militia group Kinshasa accuses Kigali of supporting. The Congolese military says M23 fighters seized Bunagana in the eastern North Kivu province. It was the main base for the rebel group in 2012 before they were driven out by the Congolese army and UN troops. The town is 60 kilometers northeast of Goma and home to nearly 2 million people. It's also a hub for international aid organizations and the UN peacekeeping mission MONUSCO. Both the DRC and Rwanda accuse each other of sponsoring armed groups and firing rockets across their landlocked borders. Earlier this month, Congolese officials suspended Rwanda's national carrier, Rwanda Air, over Kigali's alleged support for the M23 rebel group, prompting the airline to cancel all flights to the Congo in retaliation. The DRC army also accused Rwanda of deploying hundreds of special forces on its soil and bombing a school in the village of Biruma in eastern Congo, killing 2 children.
What happened to us is very tragic. My child was not sick, and I knew he was playing with his friends not far from home. Then I learned that he died. I was in utter shock. And what a death. He was in 1,000 pieces. It's a great tragedy.
We are really tired. We demand more protection so that our children may live in peace now. When there's a crackling sound, the children panic and have to flee. The child who died will not come back, but those who remain must be protected.
Rwanda has denied backing the M23 rebels and in turn accuses the Congolese army of fighting alongside the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, or FDLR, an armed group responsible for the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate, and fighting between the Congolese army and M23 rebels has displaced more than 80,000 people since March. On Wednesday, thousands of people rallied in the city of Goma in the eastern DRC to protest against Kigali's alleged backing of the armed group. The demonstrators, many of them young men, chanted slogans demanding the Rwandan president, Paul Kagame, keep out of the country's internal affairs.
Rwanda has been attacking us for 20 years now. Today we ask for vigilance of the population. Today we stand up for the cause of the nation, and we are behind our armed forces who are fighting to put the enemy out of action. Rwanda is attacking us, and today we tell Kagame to stop playing with the Congolese.
Both the African Union and the UN have called for a de-escalation of tensions. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is the current East African Community chairperson, says an East African regional force is to be deployed to Ituri, North and South Kivu regions to enforce peace. More than 120 local and foreign militia groups operate in the area and have destabilized the region for more than 2 decades. Now, let's hear more from Temitope Olodo. He is a preventive terrorism consultant and president of the Africa Security Forum. He joins me from London. Thank you so much for making our time to speak to us. What would you say is driving this latest round of fighting and diplomatic tension between the DRC and Rwanda?
It's quite strange that this should be happening. Rwanda is a country that many have been saying a lot of very good and positive things about. But this issue of the M23 seems to be a big chunk of a challenge to them. As we all know, and your viewers know, that they were accused by the United Nations for creating the M23, which was a match M23, kind of peace accord group that fall out of, the Congolese government, fall out with the Congolese government as a result of challenges with regard to issue to do with either the payment of salary to military Malaysians and people like that. But the truth here is that there should be no reason why this conflict should be continuing, because the people in between are the people that are actually suffering. And I was quite pleased that the president of Kenya have actually come out to create a bloc, Eastern Bloc, to look into this and actually stop this happening, because it will only bring devastation, more destruction, and destruction of life of normal people that are meant to be, having a good time in this part or eastern part of Congo.
Yes, but historically, Rwanda and the DRC have had issues with each other, issues of
True.
suspicion over the mineral wealth of North Kivu. But
Yes.
in recent time, I mean, the peace agreement between the two countries lasted for almost a decade. And then last November, we started seeing that peace accord being threatened by the resurgence of M23 attacks. And now up to this point, how do you...
Yes, and it's quite strange. It's quite strange because the grievance from the M23 is that the government has actually backed away from their promises, which was part of the peace accord. And that promise was the absorption of some of their members into the Congolese military. But the bottom line is, even if that was the case, all they could have done was go back to the drawing table and have, more regional leaders get involved in the resolution. But, the rhetorics from Rwanda is not really helping, saying that this is just an internal conflict and that they've been shelling across the border from Congo into Rwanda, and they have a right, to defend themselves. The bottom line is, just like, the Belgium, Prime Minister have made very clear that, it seems as if Rwanda is assuming that because of the Ukraine war, that a lot of people are not noticing what they're doing, and that the Congolese have the right to defend themselves. And this is going to become a problem, because what we're seeing now is that people are now taking sides, or countries are taking sides, and this might be the next big war in another.
Let me just bring you back to the point of, what's driving the tension between the two countries. And yes, a lot of people have said a couple of things could be the reason, but from what you just told me, are you saying that it is the resurgence of the M23 rebels that is driving this latest round?
There's no doubt that it's one of the. There's no doubt that it's one of the major conflicts. Both parties have been a bit silent with regard to issue of mineral resources, which we know that particular region is quite rich. And we're talking of North Kivu, which is a population of about 6 million. And for your viewers that will remember vividly, as of November 2012, Goma, which was one of the major 3 cities, in that province, was actually captured by the M23. This is a city of about 1 million people then, and a lot of people have lost their lives in this process.
Would you say that, do you not think that, what is the role of factual evidence in resolving this crisis?
That's where propaganda and all these things really help to escalate issues. I think there is more that Rwanda could do beyond the rhetorics that they have nothing to do with it. They were pointed out clearly by the United Nations as the government that actually created and sponsored or commanded, the M23. So there are things that they could do that could actually, show to the world that they are not actually involved in this, and this is just a rebel group that is actually either using their territory, to create more havoc against the other country, which is Congo. They both have an history between each other, so there's no doubt about that. And there is no doubt, just like you rightly highlight, that the Congolese might be using this, to whip up emotion, to be able to actually get their own back on Rwanda. But the bottom line still remains that both parties need to do more than they are doing now. There must be restraint on the part of Congo in terms of what shelling they are pushing out there, to fight the rebel, because it's definitely, there's no doubt that it might be falling into the Rwanda territory, and they also have the right to protect their territory. But bottom line,
yeah. Let me just also ask you before I let you go, because we're running out of time. It's a very complicated issue, but at the bottom of this crisis, at the very foundation of it, is the fact that you have over 100 rebel groups operating in Eastern DRC.
Yeah.
And if that is not taken care of, the part that external actors play will probably be secondary. So my question is, how do we deal with that? What will it take to root out all these armed groups in the DRC and ensure peace for the civilians caught in the crossfire?
It's a $1 million question, because at the end of the day, where the rebels are, where all this conflict is going on, people are still sorting raw materials, taking them out, because this is what is fueling the crisis, whether we like it or not, plus the enmity between these two countries. So there has to be more work that needs to be done to try and bring both parties to the table,
Negotiating table
of peace. Definitely, there's no doubt.
Temitope Olodo, preventive terrorism consultant and the president of the Africa Security Forum, thank you so much for speaking to Africa Matters. The UK government is pushing ahead with a plan to deport young asylum seekers to Rwanda. But rights groups say the Central African nation only has the capacity to house a limited number of migrants, and the policy is also unlikely to prove helpful to London's plan to stop the smuggling of illegal migrants. Shoaib Hassan explains.
This transit camp in Rwanda is home to young migrants who arrived from Libya. They were stuck in detention centers there while on their way to Europe. Now, the British government also wants those arriving illegally in the UK deported to Kigali, saying it's a deterrent to migrants seeking a better life in the UK.
Yeah, the UK government is, my message to them is that human beings are human. You cannot tell them, go and stay here, or go and do this and do this. No. Because if they feel better in UK is better for them.
Neoni says he fled conflict in South Sudan in 2014 with his brothers. The 22-year-old says they spent a fortune to get out, but his brothers were killed by the traffickers, and Neoni ended up spending 7 years in a Libyan detention camp. Now he's in Rwanda, but still determined to travel to Europe. The UK announced its new policy in April, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson vowing to press ahead. That's despite the first flight with 7 migrants on it being cancelled on Tuesday evening, minutes before takeoff, after a late legal change by the European Court of Human Rights.
We have had to stop it. It's been extremely difficult to find a way of doing it that is humane. It is not reasonable to try to turn boats around at sea in the English Channel. Those waters are very dangerous.
But the UN disagrees.
The UK says, you know, we do this to save people from dangerous journeys. Let me doubt that a little bit. I mean, saving people from dangerous journeys is great, is absolutely great. But is that the right way to do it? Is that the real motivation for this deal to happen? I don't think so.
Opposition parties in the UK say the policy is a move to distract attention from increasing criticism of PM Johnson's handling of COVID-19 rules and the Brexit dialogue with the EU. The Rwandan government says it remains committed to its deal with the UK.
If people apply for asylum in Rwanda and their claim is rejected, through the process that we'll have here, they will still have a pathway to legal residency in Rwanda. And we welcome people from everywhere. So the new arrivals will be free to come and go as they please. And if they choose to leave Rwanda, which is one of the options, we will support them to travel to their country of origin or a safe third country where they have a legal right to stay.
The controversial policy will be scrutinised in the High Court in London next month. But the British government says it is committed to the policy and is already preparing for the next flight. Shoaib Hassan, Africa Matters.
Agriculture is one of the UK's least diverse sectors based on race, class, age, and gender. Recent government data shows that more than 97% of workers in British farming are white. But one Zimbabwean man is challenging those norms, all the while building up a successful business as the UK's only maize farmer. Temitope Olodo reports.
It's on this 100,000 square metre field in the middle of rural England where you'll find David Moanaka, a former journalist who escaped press censorship in Zimbabwe. He's now one of the only 2 black farmers in Britain and the country's only maize producer.
I never ever thought I would come to the United Kingdom and end up as a farmer in this country. I grew up eating white maize in Zimbabwe like most Zimbabweans. And when I came to the UK, it just wasn't available.
Growing white maize under harsh weather conditions wasn't the only challenge David faced. He also struggled to find landowners willing to take on a chance on an inexperienced and newly arrived African immigrant.
The first thing I did was going around knocking on farmers' doors, ask them if they had any bit of land to let so that I could start growing maize. I put an advert in one of the national newspapers that I was looking for land to grow white maize.
After toiling for 6 years, David has been able to lay down some roots. He now grows his crops across 2 square kilometres of farmland in the UK and is the sole supplier of white maize to some of the country's biggest retailers, including Harrods. David feels the impact of his farming most here at the Moanaka store he opened himself. This diverse community, including the African diaspora and curious local shoppers, can buy fresh produce such as white maize and pumpkin leaves that go straight from the farm to table.
People kind of go absolutely crazy for this as well. This is pumpkin leaves. If you're lucky, you'll find it on a good day. It's not promised, so yeah, if you do find it, you're lucky. Oh, thank God.
As well as providing the African community with nostalgic food from home, David is also shaking up the representation of farmers in Britain. Access to farming in Britain still remains a rarity amongst budding black farmers, and agriculture is still one of the least diverse sectors across the country, and that's mainly due to its tough barriers to entry. Despite this, David has created a niche within a rigid industry and become an inspiration to other budding farmers and entrepreneurs. Lape Alarinoye, Africa Matters, London.
You're watching Africa Matters, and here's a roundup of other stories making news across the continent. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has appointed a government committee to negotiate peace with forces from the rebellious northern region of Tigray. The chairperson of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, Debretsion Gebremichael, said they would send a delegation if the peace process was credible, impartial, and principled. The committee has been given just over 2 weeks to hammer out details of the negotiations. The UN says the conflict that began in November 2020 has killed and displaced hundreds of thousands of people and forced 2.2 million to flee their homes. The Namibian Environment and Tourism Ministry says there's been a surge in rhino poaching after finding 11 dehorned carcasses at the Etosha National Park. The country accounts for a third of the world's remaining black rhinos, and the Save the Rhino Trust estimates it has just over 200 of them left in the wild. 22 rhinos have been killed by poachers since the beginning of the year, according to the ministry, compared to 43 last year. Air pollution contributes to the global burden of heart disease, lung cancer, and respiratory diseases such as asthma. The World Health Organization says 99% of the world is breathing contaminated air, according to internationally recognized guidelines. But countries like Uganda carry a greater burden, as Sena Ceylan explains.
Respiratory illness had long plagued Michael Wanyama's son, and doctors blamed air pollution in the bustling Ugandan capital of Kampala.
We don't have the same systems in the bodies, you know. Some people are affected more. Some people are more susceptible to poor air quality. So I was told it's because of the air around us, the air he breathes, that causes him to fall sick all the time.
So the Wanyama family had to leave their home and move to an area with fewer car fumes and other pollutants. And Michael says their experience inspired his anti-pollution work. According to the 2021 World Air Quality Report, Uganda's capital Kampala was ranked among the world's most polluted cities, with pollution levels that exceed WHO safety standards by 5 to 7 times.
Already, as it is, government of Uganda noted the problem of air pollution, and they have been trying to regulate the cars that come into the country in terms of age. Of course, the older the car is, the more it pollutes. So they have put some cutoff for cars to come into Uganda, and even then put in place an environment tax.
The WHO says 7 million people die each year because of the combined effects of pollution. Scientists say particles from car exhaust, factories, and wildfires are among the most harmful to human health. And many people in rural parts of Uganda, where electrification has been slow, burn wood or charcoal to cook or heat their homes. A local company called Airco has come up with an app that sends real-time data to users about the air quality around them to combat pollution by raising awareness. They have already installed 150 units across Uganda.
It's going to find you, whether you're rich or poor, you're going to breathe the same air. So if it's dirty, you won't really do much against it. So we have the innovation at least to try to monitor so that you can influence actions.
Advocates say they hope more public awareness and government action will help improve air quality in the Ugandan capital, and families can breathe cleaner air in Kampala. Sena Sailan, Africa Matters.
We return to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but this time it's a story of entrepreneurship. One woman's initiative there has put bread on the table for hundreds of others. Adama Munu tells us more.
Coffee is a great pick-me-up. It certainly has been for the work of Solange Kwija Kahiriri. She left the field of communications to start a women's coffee cooperative in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
We have 2 products on the market, Ishima coffee. We have coffee powder as well as roasted coffee, green coffee and parchment coffee, and we also have soap made from coffee.
The cooperative provides work for 1,500 women. It gives them coffee seedlings to plant and it makes soap.
They don't make much money, but we give them certain perks. Once they produce coffee, they become members of the cooperative. They sell the coffee, and they will be able to sell it at a good price. They can sell it directly to the market with no middleman.
The cooperative can produce 5,000 bars of soap a week. The seeds Kahiriri has planted have grown to feed many other families, and Mamans is one of them.
Our coffee group is very good and important because it's helped my family. I'm able to put food on the table thanks to this association.
The cooperative has also expanded women's roles in the coffee industry. They're generally confined to the fields, but at the cooperative, they're involved in the business end of the industry, such as sales and marketing. The biggest challenge they face is the bad roads.
Coffee is mainly farmed in areas where there is a lack of road infrastructure. There is also a lack of electricity. Just like here in the factory, if we had power, then it would be easier for us to modernize the factory, which would enable us to work with machines.
Members hope the cooperative grows just like their coffee plants. Its products are also finding their way into the hands of customers in Rwanda and Burundi, but they're hoping to branch out even further. Adama Munu, Africa Matters.
This week, we explore Bakau in the west coast region of the Gambia. It's known for its Kachikali crocodile pool, which is a sacred site for locals since the reptile represents the power of fertility in the Gambia. Let's take a closer look. And that's our show this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle @AdeshewaJosh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks a lot for watching. I will see you next week.